Hi, so to continue on this roadster conversion, last weekend I picked up some batteries. This is a big step forward because so far I haven't managed to sort those out, and I was lucky enough to get in touch with a guy who was also doing a roadster, well not a roadster, a smart conversion, but wasn't using all of the batteries he had. So I was able to have 12 of these at quite a reasonable price. So here they are. They are very similar to Nissan Leaf batteries, but I believe these are out of a Renault Fluence. Not sure of the date. There's no marks on them at all. Just a very small barcode in one corner. Each cell is 8.1 volts max, split. This is so that the BMS can control the two different packs in there. Each one weighs around, got a scale here. Okay, so there we are. So each one is just under 3.8 kilos. So along with the 12 batteries, which will give me the 96 volts, I've also got all the other ancillary parts that are used to bolt these together. So I've got some spacers, some with connections on, and some, so that's one that gives me some bolting points, and some are just spacers. So these locate each of the batteries. And I haven't assembled anything yet. I've literally just taken it out of the box and had a look. I've also got all the bars, obviously going to go positive and negative there. So the tie bars to tie them across, and the bolts. I've got two end plates. So these appear to set up the whole pack. So you arrange the whole pack of 12. And these also include some tie bars to tie the pack together. So I should be able to assemble these as a block. Now originally I was going to separate these into various packs and put them into where the fuel tank is, but it looks like these may be better off in the front of the car. So at 3.8 kilos each, that gives me a total weight without the ancillary parts of around 45 kilos, which is not that heavy as far as batteries can go. Also the kilowatt hours of these, so this will give me a total of around 6 kilowatt hours of power at around 100 volts, each one being a 60, I think it's a 60 ampere hour battery. I just need to obviously arrange it so that all the brackets and everything are in the right place. I need to arrange it so that I get a positive negative arrangement. So obviously I've got 6 of one pole and then 6 of another pole. As I say, each one's given me around the 8.1 volts. This set appears to be, okay, this is 8 volts. The highest reading I've had is 8.05, the lowest is 7.85, so they're all within range. So I'm guessing they're all going to be roughly balanced to start with. Of course I'm going to have to be careful with these once I've bolted it together, because I'm going to have 100 volts DC, and I've bought some insulating gloves so that when I get to that stage of bolting these on, suddenly the whole thing becomes less safe, and I need to be a bit more careful then. So that's the battery set. Next thing is to have a look how these might fit in the car. Perhaps I could loosely put these blocks together and just check out where they're going to go to check the arrangement, and see how that looks. So my original plan was that in here I was going to put the batteries up under this space. This is where the fuel tank was, further back, and here there's quite a lot of space. But looking at how this pack goes together in a block of 12, there are two other ways to do that. One is to put them vertically in the space there, but I think 12 aren't going to, well, I know the 12 aren't going to go in a row. I could look at separating the pack, mounting them up under this space where the fuel tank goes, but that's going to make them quite inaccessible. So if I want to do anything at all within that space, I'm going to have to build quite an awkward, say, battery box. It's going to make it difficult for me to get to some of these other components, and I'm also going to have to split the pack into separate sections. So my thought now is to actually put these batteries in the front. So the front has quite a reasonable space. They've got a boot box in there, which I could utilise and mount the batteries inside that boot box. I don't think I'm going to get the 12 across there though. Or I could dispense with the boot box completely, or cut the rim out and hollow the centre out, and then use this space to mount my assembled pack of 12 across there. I could probably go vertically perhaps, but I think horizontally might be a better fit, and put them in the front. So I'll have 45 kilos, well nearly 50 kilos extra weight in the front, which has a small downside. I could take out the heavy lead acid battery and save myself a little bit of weight. I could maybe put the lead acid or another version, a lighter version of it in the back even, just to save a bit of weight and perhaps create a little bit more space down there to actually fit these batteries in. So I think the next thing to do is to build up the pack, see how big the pack is. Perhaps I don't need to put all the batteries in the pack, I could just build the frame, and see how that fits. Well, I remember there was one other tip that the guy I bought these off gave me, and it was just a concern he had really about when he assembles these brackets across, or these plates across. These plates, by the way, are solid copper. They just seem to have some kind of plating, not exactly sure what on them, and these terminals obviously all need cleaning up. So the standard assembly is to just use these bolts that together, but the concern he had was as you tighten that down, you put a bit of twisting force on this connection. So his answer to that was to use a grub screw and a nylock. And as he put a washer under there, so the idea is that when you bolt that down, at the moment it looks just like a bolt, of course, but by using an Allen key and a spanner you can hold the centre core of the bolt and then tighten the nut down. And what you're doing, I can see here that there is a bit of rotation on each plate, and you're just taking the stress off of the rotation point. So I could see that would be definitely a good thing to do, although obviously they don't do it when they build the car, but it seems like a good idea. Obviously these are also solid copper, these all need cleaning up. The centre one I don't need, although the BMS still connects to that, but I just don't need to put a full plate on it. Okay, that's the battery itself. So the next stage is to use these end plates. I'll bolt the system together and see what the frame size looks like. Okay, so that's the frame together. Now I had a few discoveries when putting this frame together. One is I seem to have 4 struts, but there are only really 3 main fixing points which correlate to the 3 points on each cell that you can use when you use the connection brackets. This one here does fit across the back, but I'm not sure that it's meant to be part of the structure. But anyway, so those three are in, M8 bolts in the corners there, so they're all tight. Now the other thing, right now, so that seems like a nice frame. The other thing that's become quite quickly apparent is that's not a space for 12. I've got this part which is giving me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cells, but that's only going to there. So 10, 11, 12 cells is only going to get me to here somewhere. So obviously I'm going to have to cut those brackets down, but that's fine. I'll check the fit using these. I can bring this into this next hole, which will probably be a more accurate position for them. So it's still useful to have that frame, and this just gives me some fantastic fixing points. And I could clad this in an aluminium case, so really it's sort of pre-made. Okay, so I've put this unit together and I've shortened the ends. I've brought them in a little bit. Just measuring this a bit more before I do any more cutting. Each cell comes out at 34mm each with its plate on top. And so 12 of those is going to add up to 340, 68, 408mm. So I'm going to be here somewhere. So I just need to take off about 20-25mm off the end of that. So I just need to bring that in, add 3 slots in there and bring that in facing. So really this pack is going to be surprisingly small. While I'm measuring things, actually, just to give you another idea, there's the width is 222mm and 303mm long. So 34, 222 and 304 the dimensions of these. And just to go over the spec again there, 65 ampere hour, two cells in each pack's 4.05 volts, which gives me a total of 8.1 volts max per pack. So that's really the pack together enough for me to actually tell where it's going to fit in the car. While I'm here actually with this, as you may have noticed, I've also got some of the 18650 cells that have been putting together. I've collected these from various scrapyards and things over time. Most of them, I'd say about 80% of the cells, come out at around 2000 milliampere hours. Some I've thrown away, or recycled, because they're really down to almost 0 volts, to get absolutely nothing in. Some are coming in around 1000 to 1500 milliampere hours, but this pack I've put together here is around just 2000 milliampere hours. So I've arranged them in 4 in parallel, 12 in series, so that's going to give me roughly 48 volts as a system, or it depends how I choose to solder it or arrange it finally. What I was thinking of doing with these was, rather than build this pack up and have all the risks of the very high voltage, massive shorting currents that I would have if I put this together, was to build these up. I know I can drive the car backwards and forwards slowly on just a few amps, you know, so 10-20 amps would get me moving and would enable me to drive the car. So if I put this one, and I'm just building the other one up at the back there, if I were to build those up, that will give me the same voltage as this pack, but would be more of a test set that I could utilise in the short term before I actually connect that. Okay, so I've come to the conclusion that it's going to be better not to put these batteries in the back. It would involve me splicing up this unit, having to build another box. I just don't need to do that. This is a nice bank one single thing that I can box up properly. So I'm definitely going to leave it. It would fit down in that hole if I move the controller out of the way. I just have this problem with this piece here. I could cut that out, it's not a big issue, but I just don't think it's worthwhile. So the change of plan is to put these batteries in the front of the car. I can, without the battery box, this will go in there, so it's a reasonable fit. It's close to here, but I think with the ends cut off, and I think with that 25mm shorter, that's going to go quite nicely in there. The alternative is to try and use this case, which the liner, it's a close fit to this liner. If I were to take out that side, that's going to just go in there, and that would give me a nice box, which is sealed around the top, sealed as you bring the bonnet down. I could vent the box and mount some fans in it if necessary, just to get a bit of airflow for battery cooling. I can monitor the temperature of the environment it all sits in, and have a nice clean interface socket somewhere on one of these faces. I think cutting that box is going to be, and mounting this frame in, is going to be a good answer for the battery system. Right, I was just finishing off and thought I'd do some of these connections to get some idea about how some of this goes together, and noticed one important thing. I think when I showed this earlier I had it upside down. It became apparent because I could see the bolt marks on the tops on the other side of these plates, so obviously it's fitting on that way up, and these BMS parts, need to be a little bit careful about how I lay this out and make sure I don't short anything, but these are obviously going to lay down in these tracks. This is going to take a while to do, I guess, and go, I guess, on top of each of these plates. I just need to work out how that was how those cables are routed. Okay, so obviously each BMS line is laying in there like that, and then you've got the smaller ones for the centre tap points, which appear to lay in there. Yep. And then each of these cables is clipped and routed very neatly down those channels, and then I'll either, well, I won't use these bolts, I'll use those the grub screw and nut idea, just to pin each of those down. So that's going to take a little while to do, and I really don't see the need to do this yet. I think I get all this mounted in the chassis first, and then actually connect this up once it's all been bolted up fully. Okay, well, I hope that was useful and interesting. Batteries for me have been the most not confusing but difficult to decide on part of the project, partly because of the cost. Obviously you can buy some great batteries, but it's going to cost thousands of pounds. This is going to give me some capacity, may get me 30 miles. This will give me 6 kilowatt hours. If the car is using about 200 watts per mile, then that will get me around 30-mile range. The Nissan Leaf, I used to have a Nissan Leaf, that would use about 200 to 250 watts per mile on a reasonable run. You can get it down to 150, but I'm not going to expect that. even with this Smart. Smart is obviously not designed for best aerodynamics, although it is a very light car, so acceleration will be good in it, but it's still going to have poor airflow, and therefore it's still going to use a reasonable amount of energy. And so if I can get 200 watts per mile, I'd be very happy with that, which would give me the 30-mile range, which again, I'd be very happy to have a 30-mile range out of such a small battery pack. And then in the future I can extend this pack. I've still got that space in the boot. Now I've decided to put this in the front, so I'll be able to easily, say, double the range, which would make it a very usable car. But 30-mile range would give me commuting distance with a bit of leeway, and will prove the point of the electric car. So thanks for watching. I hope that was interesting, and next stage I think will be to get this pack into the box, get it mounted, and then show a video of this being bolted up together and exactly how I'm going to use the BMS, which I haven't sorted out yet, and just the general charging and use of these batteries.